1537 hours. A faint blip appeared on the radar screen aboard USCGC Hamilton WMSL 753 as she patrolled the eastern Caribbean Sea. A fast, steel-hulled vessel was cutting through open water at over 20 knots, running dark. No AIS signal, no radio contact, a ghost on the ocean. Seconds later, a second contact emerged, larger, sharper, and moving in the opposite direction. Identification confirmed. A Venezuelan Navy Guaycamacuto-class patrol ship, accelerating directly toward the Coast Guard cutter's intercept line. Two tracks now converge like crossing bullets. Inside Hamilton's Combat Information Center, alarms pulsed red. This was no routine drug chase. A foreign warship was maneuvering to block an American law enforcement operation in international waters. At the command node in Key West, officers watched the feed go live. Thermal imagery, vector overlays, encrypted voice relays. Every eye fixed on the screen as the distance between the two ships dropped below 1 nautical mile. On the bridge, the air was tense and hot. The commanding officer spoke only once. "Hold course! Record everything!" The Caribbean, calm and blue a moment ago, had turned into a chessboard of nations, and within minutes, the United States Coast Guard was about to face down the Venezuelan Navy on the open sea. 1541 hours. The radar signature grew sharper. The second contact was now confirmed. A Venezuelan Navy Guaycamacuto-class patrol ship, steel gray hull slicing through the Caribbean at 22 knots. Its course was deliberate, cutting directly across USCGC Hamilton's intercept line. The air on the bridge turned heavy. Officers leaned over radar screens, tracing vectors converging within a mile. The Venezuelan vessel carried the unmistakable outline of a forward gun mount and radar dome. Military posture, not commercial drift. Hamilton's transponder called out on open channels, yet no reply returned. The silence itself became a message. In the Combat Information Center, technicians adjusted frequency bands, monitoring every blip and echo. The operation had begun as a law enforcement intercept against a suspected drug runner. Now a sovereign navy had entered the picture. Two distinct missions, policing and deterrence, collided on the same grid. 1544. Far to the south, the suspected go-fast skiff continued its desperate run. The fiberglass hull skipped across the chop at 45 knots, engines screaming, fuel pouring from twin tanks. Thermal imaging showed 3 heat signatures aboard, crouched low, tossing objects overboard. Each splash left a pale plume on radar, packages meant to vanish before capture. Hamilton's command deck moved into combat readiness. The flight crew rolled the MH-65 Dolphin helicopter to the launch position while the rigid hull inflatable boat was armed and lowered for pursuit. Everything unfolded with measured precision. Harnesses clipped, cameras rolling, rifles sealed under spray covers. No panic, only process. 1546. The helicopter cleared the deck, rotor wash scattering mist over the stern. From above, its sensors painted the scene in bright contrasts. One smuggler fleeing, one Navy ship maneuvering to block, one Coast Guard cutter trying to hold authority in the middle. Hamilton adjusted speed to match the closing pattern. The Venezuelan warship held its course, crossing the American bow at less than 800 yards. Both hulls plowed through intersecting wakes. One wrong calculation could shear steel. Inside, the helmsman's hands tightened on the wheel. Radar operators marked every second. The crew knew the protocols: no aggression unless attacked, maintain legal footage, preserve evidence for review in Washington. Every second was history in the making. 1549. From above, the Dolphin's optical turret tracked the Venezuelan vessel shadowing Hamilton's flank. The warship's running lights flickered once, perhaps a signal, perhaps coincidence. On the deck below, sailors scanned with binoculars, reading body language across the distance. Crew on rails, helmets on, but no weapons raised. It was a standoff, made of patience rather than gunfire. For a brief moment, the horizon was split between crimson clouds and the metallic glint of two flags, stars and stripes on one side, yellow, blue, red on the other. The only sound was the twin rhythm of engines pushing against the sea. 1553. The smaller smuggler veered unexpectedly north, back toward the intercept zone. Whether panic or calculation, the maneuver dragged all three vessels into a collision triangle. Hamilton accelerated. The RHIB dropped into the water with a thud, engines screaming as 6 boarding officers sped toward the skiff. Overhead, the Dolphin lowered altitude, rotor wash flattening the waves. Its pilot released a single red flare, streaking across the sky, a universal warning shot without violence. The flare burned above the surf, casting red light over the Venezuelan ship's bridge windows. For 10 seconds, no one moved. Then the chase resumed. The RHIB carved through the spray, closing distance meter by meter. The skiff's crew, blinded by floodlight reflection, hesitated. The inflatable slammed alongside, boarding hooks caught, and the American team vaulted over the gunwale. Within moments, the outboards went silent. 1557. From Hamilton's bridge, the scene unfolded through binoculars and thermal feed. Movement, struggle, then stillness. The traffickers were subdued, the contraband confirmed, over a ton of cocaine and chemical precursors drifting among shattered bales. At that same moment, the Venezuelan patrol ship stopped dead in the water, engines at idle, floodlights sweeping white across the waves. Its bridge crew stood motionless behind glass, neither hostile nor welcoming, only watching under the veil of sovereign duty. Hamilton held position, bow angled west, maintaining 1,000 yards of silence. Only the hum of generators and the rhythm of the sea filled the void. Every bearing, heading, and hull number was recorded. The encounter now more endurance than action. 1600. In Key West, analysts studied live feeds in near silence. 2 armed ships locked in international waters, neither able to retreat without yielding the narrative. On board Hamilton, discipline held firm. The RHIB team secured evidence. Technicians logged samples and timestamps. Crew rotated stations with quiet precision. 1604. The Venezuelan vessel edged closer, wake brushing the current like a whispered warning. Lights dimmed to navigation beacons, a deliberate reminder that the space remained contested. Inside Hamilton, gestures replaced words, calm, deliberate, unshaken. Restraint, not reaction, defined the moment. 1608. As twilight deepened, both vessels lingered in quiet defiance. The helicopter circled above, recording every frame for history or politics. Then, almost ceremonially, the Venezuelan ship turned west, her wake spreading and fading into darkness. Hamilton waited until radar showed her gone, before easing forward again. The crew finally breathed, knowing they had done more than intercept smugglers. They had faced a foreign navy without firing a single round. The log entry was brief. Hostile interference, no engagement. In the stillness that followed, engines hummed and deck lights dimmed as the cutter resumed patrol. The danger hadn't ended. It had simply gone quiet. In Washington, the footage would soon arrive. What the nation's leaders decided next would determine whether this incident remained a skirmish at sea or the spark of something far more serious. 1627 hours, Eastern Time. In Washington, the situation was already cascading through encrypted channels. The feed from USCGC Hamilton, live video, radar logs, and encrypted telemetry arrived at the National Security Council. Every agency with a stake in the Caribbean watched in silence. Homeland Security, the Pentagon, Southcom, and the State Department. On the wall-sized display, 2 dots glowed over the digital map of the Caribbean. one red, one blue, circling, holding distance, refusing to back down. What began as a drug interdiction was now classified as hostile maritime interference. The term sounded clinical, but it carried weight. In military law, it meant a foreign navy had challenged a lawful U.S. operation in international waters. Analysts briefed the chair. Venezuela had been shadowing American operations since early September, after 2 of its smuggling vessels were destroyed by coordinated Coast Guard Navy actions. Caracas had denounced the U.S. as pirates, and new satellite imagery showed Venezuela deploying additional patrol craft near Grenada and Dominica. The Hamilton incident wasn't an accident. It was part of a pattern. The president wasn't in the room yet, but his national security advisor was. The discussion turned from tactics to optics. Every camera aboard Hamilton had recorded the Venezuelan ship's maneuver. Every second of restraint now served a purpose, proving American discipline under pressure. No one suggested escalation, yet no one proposed retreat either. To withdraw would invite repetition. To respond militarily would ignite the hemisphere. The room settled on a compromise. Hamilton would maintain patrol, record every provocation, and hold position under full self-defense authority. The Coast Guard was instructed to preserve every byte of data for congressional and diplomatic review. In the dim light, screens flickered between feeds. The smuggler's deck, the Venezuelan hull, the U.S. flag illuminated by rotor wash. The meaning was unmistakable. America had just been tested, not by firepower, but by nerve. And somewhere between those glowing screens and the midnight Caribbean, the question lingered: how long could restraint hold before it began to look like weakness? That question would soon find its answer at sea, where silence ended and the real test began. 17:02 hours, local time. The sun slid toward the horizon and turned the sea a metallic gold, but nothing about the picture looked peaceful aboard USCG Hamilton. The cutter held a steady 20 knots, bow lifting and settling in a slow rhythm as it tracked the smuggler's last known position, roughly 5 nautical miles ahead. Astern and a little to port, the Venezuelan warship's silhouette sat on the horizon line like a blade, dull gray, unblinking, uncommunicative, shadowing at a measured distance that was close enough to be felt, too far to be challenged without consequence. Above, the MH-65 Dolphin carved wide, methodical orbits. Through its FLIR turret, the world reduced to heat. 3 bright cores suspended in a triangle of pressure. The dead in the water go fast, the Venezuelan cutter holding off the quarter, and Hamilton, broad-shouldered in the center, owning the geometry of the engagement. The helicopter's downwash stippled the surface, spray atomized, and drifted back in the light easterly wind. On Hamilton's bridge, the white lights were already killed. Only instrument glow painted faces, range rings, bearing ticks, speed tapes sliding in steady increments. In the Combat Information Center, operators worked in a low murmur, gloved hands on trackballs, thumb wheels, and push-to-talk keys. Every console carried the same tension. Procedures executed exactly, because precision was the only thing between a clean intercept and a headline no one wanted. Even the sea seemed to hold its breath, swell 1 to 1.5 meters, 12 to 14 knots of wind out of 090, whitecaps smoothed by the dying light. The smell of hot steel, salt, and aviation fuel hung in the air. 1709. The flight deck signalman's wand dipped once. The RHIB cradle pins released with a metallic clack. The 26-foot over-the-horizon RHIB kissed the surface, flexed on its shock-mitigating seats, and then the twin outboards bit. The boat shouldered through the chop and accelerated hard, spray sheeting away in silver veils. 6 boarding officers hunkered down behind the console and collar, coxswain steady on the throttles, boarding officer kneeling behind him with tablet and checklist, engineer scanning gauges, bowhook ready with the grapnel, two cover officers sweeping arcs with their optics, Kevlar vests creaked against webbing. Night vision visors were canted up, ready to drop. The go-fast skiff drifted beam to the swell, a streak of oxidized paint above a scuffed fiberglass hull. The water around it glittered with torn bales. White plastic ruptured like paper ribs, leaching powder into the blue in thin, cloudy tails. Above, the Dolphin held station at about 350 to 400 feet, rotor disc beating the dusk. Its MWIR image showed 3 human heat blooms compressed low behind the console and engine well. The approach sequence looked like a diagram brought to life. The RHIB slid in from the leeward stern quarter to deny the smuggler a turn into the wind. Speed matched to drift. Engines feathered. Bowline thrown. Grapnel grabbed. Collar to hull. Fenders biting. Movements were small, exact, and fast. Bow secured. Deck swept. Engine controls neutralized. Kill tethers pulled. The boarding officer flowed past the console into the forepeak. The cover pair locked the angles that mattered. Hands, waistbands, engine cowls. In under 60 seconds, the noise changed timbre from open throttle chaos to the controlled thrum of idling outboards and short, clipped acknowledgments over headsets. Cargo lay stacked in the well and under a low tarp. 1.1 metric tons of cocaine and fentanyl precursors, by gross estimate, bundled in plastic-wrapped bricks, tape edges slick with seawater. A digital camera recorded 360-degree sweeps. Evidence tags clicked into place. GPS timestamps burned into the corner of every frame. Above, the Dolphin completed 2 confirmation passes, then nosed toward Hamilton for fuel, its gimbal lens swiveling to hold the Venezuelan ship inside the frame until the last second. 1716. The Venezuelan patrol vessel nosed inside 1,200 yards. The forward gun mount rotated a few degrees off the deck, elevated high enough to say, "Armed, not aiming." Searchlights flickered, narrow cones sweeping and retracting, drawing chalk lines on the water as if sketching a boundary no one else recognized. On Hamilton's scopes, the warship's X-band return thickened with each fractional course correction. On the ESM panel, a thread of emissions rose and fell, the electronic equivalent of a glance. In the CIC, one console operator logged every change. Bearing to a tenth, range to the yard, light patterns, RPM estimates by wake morphology. Another operator annotated the AIS silence and radar behavior. No voice traffic, no challenge, only posture. The watch supervisor's finger traced a static wedge on the large display, the safe water cone that Hamilton would not yield. The cutter's captain watched from the bridge wing, rain jacket collar up against the rotor wash eddies coming off the helo deck. The restraint was muscular, felt in forearms and jawlines, because every instinct in a body trained for control wants to do something when another hull shadows close. The Venezuelan ship offered no voice, no flag signals, only the low, even hum of turbines and the glow of deck lights. A language of presence, a presence designed to be photographed. 1722. Hamilton eased her throttles back, engines holding just above idle as the RHIB raced home through the waves, its bow rising under the weight of seized cargo glistening with seawater. On radar, the Venezuelan cutter remained a steady heartbeat of steel, motionless yet defiant, neither closing nor drifting away, content to let tension fill the space between. The sunset faded from gold to iron gray, and the sea flattened into a dark mirror where 2 hulls, one American, one Venezuelan, faced each other across a single mile of still water. What began as a narcotics seizure had become a test of composure, a quiet duel of discipline and sovereignty. The air itself seemed to hesitate, heavy with the knowledge that one wrong move could turn silence into incident. Above them, the Dolphin helicopter traced slow circuits, its red lights turning like embers against the dusk. From that height, the scene appeared timeless. Hamilton's orange and white hull gleaming faintly against the shadowed gunmetal of the Venezuelan ship, their reflections trembling on the calm surface. On deck, sailors secured evidence under forensic light, the blue glow cutting through mist and salt spray as they moved with the precision of ritual. 1731. Darkness closed in until the sea and sky became one. The flag at Hamilton's mast fluttered beneath a single lamp, its motion slow and steady like breathing. Across the void, faint silhouettes moved under Venezuelan searchlights, visible enough to warn, vague enough to threaten. Whether they held cameras or rifles, no one could tell, and that uncertainty was exactly the point. Inside the cutter, every second was recorded, times, bearings, lights, comms, and temperature readings all filed like the pulse of an ocean holding its breath. Overhead, the Poseidon's orbit turned the standoff into data, a mosaic of heat and radar echoes, destined for archives and analysis. The Caribbean night grew thick with vibration and waiting. Every clang, hiss, and metallic tick echoed as if amplified by restraint itself. Yet neither ship moved, neither voice broke the silence, and the mile of black water between them became something fragile and powerful at once, an unspoken agreement that peace, for now, would hold. At 1739, a faint contrail appeared high above, an orbiting P-8A Poseidon reconnaissance aircraft, relaying visuals to Key West. Its sensors captured everything: infrared heat blooms from Hamilton's engines, radar pulses from the Venezuelan cutter, even the shimmering wake of the RHIB returning home. The United States now had a complete digital footprint of the standoff, proof against any accusation to come. In Washington, analysts were already classifying the incident as gray zone conflict, aggression conducted below the threshold of war. It was the modern battlefield of the 21st century. No gunfire, no casualties, just willpower under the microscope. 1746. The Venezuelan warship turned west at last, turbines humming briefly before the sound was swallowed by wind and distance. No signal followed, only a measured withdrawal that felt less like retreat than ritual. Hamilton maintained position for several minutes, the helicopter making one final sweep to confirm the separation. When the contact finally faded from radar, the air aboard seemed to exhale. On deck, vests were unbuckled, helmets set aside, and the log recorded the night's outcome. Hostile interference concluded. No shots fired below. Conversation came slow, the quiet heavier than relief. The crew understood they had stood within inches of escalation, yet managed to hold a fragile balance few would ever see. At sea, the entire standoff had lasted less than an hour, but in the language of navies, it would echo for years. By 1810, Hamilton was back on course, her engines humming low as the sea darkened around her. The seized cargo was sealed and tagged, the suspects confined under guard, and a short, encrypted message to Key West confirmed the mission's success before the radios fell silent again. Behind her, the Venezuelan cutter slipped into the horizon, its lights swallowed by dusk. The adrenaline faded slowly, replaced by the mechanical rhythm of patrol, the steady vibration of steel against waves, the familiar hum that told the crew they had crossed another invisible line without firing a shot. They had upheld U.S. law, asserted maritime rights, and shown restraint where others might have reached for force. It was, in every measure, a victory built not on confrontation, but on control. By dawn, new satellite images captured Hamilton still on station, her deck glinting under the rising sun. A single photograph, taken from the Dolphin helicopter, two ships, 1 mile apart, frozen in parallel, circulated quietly through intelligence channels. To most, it was an uneventful patrol. To those who understood its meaning, it was a message written in silence. Power held steady is still power displayed. The world now knew what had happened at sea. But in Washington, another question loomed larger. Would this silence hold, or was it only the pause before the next confrontation? By sunrise, USCGC Hamilton had resumed its patrol track along the eastern Caribbean, engines humming steadily under gray-blue light. The sea, now calm again, gave no hint of what had unfolded the night before. But across Washington, the incident reverberated through every channel of power. Reports arrived in sequence. 1.1 tons of narcotics seized, evidence verified, suspects in custody, and 0 shots fired. A mission that began as law enforcement had ended as a test of strategic restraint. And victory came not through dominance, but through discipline. Within hours, the Venezuelan government issued an official protest. State media labeled the interception an act of maritime piracy, accusing the U.S. of violating its sovereign patrol zone. Editorials in Caracas declared the Coast Guard's actions a provocation ordered by Washington. Yet the footage told another story. A U.S. cutter maintaining international law, a foreign warship crossing into its path, and a professional crew that refused to take the bait. Inside the Pentagon, analysts called it a textbook example of gray zone warfare, operations that blurred the lines between peace and confrontation. The Venezuelan cutter hadn't attacked, it had tested. The Coast Guard hadn't fired, it had held the line. Both sides had played their roles in a quiet drama of deterrence, one that could have spiraled into global consequence if a single decision had gone wrong. For the United States, the message was clear. Maritime security is no longer defined by fleets of destroyers or aircraft carriers, but by discipline under pressure, by men and women who can make decisions on rolling decks under the eyes of the world. The Coast Guard, often overlooked beside the Navy, had once again proven its role as both shield and signal. Military precision blended with moral restraint. Across the Caribbean, U.S. intelligence tracked new Venezuelan patrol routes. The pattern of shadowing continued, though never again as close as that night. The lesson had been received. Strength, it turned out, could speak in silence. As Hamilton steamed north toward Puerto Rico, the crew gathered briefly on deck, the American flag rising against the morning wind. Salt spray hit their faces, but the expressions were steady. They knew that what they had done would never make front-page news. But somewhere deep inside the chain of command, it mattered. It was proof that order still had a voice in an ocean full of noise. In an age where conflict hides beneath diplomacy, moments like this define what it means to stand watch. The U.S. Coast Guard didn't fire a shot, but it won a battle of presence, patience, and principle. If you believe America's strength is built not just on firepower, but on discipline, then make sure to support the mission. Like this video, subscribe to Military Power, and stand with us as we uncover the battles shaping our world.